Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And the first guest on today's show, well, the regular, I say guest, Burnsy, you're not really a guest, are you? You're part of the furniture. How are you doing? All right?
I'm all right. I'm the only. It's me and thee at the moment. Fletch is running late, and Prutz is having a rest, having been to the Euros. So it's me and thee. I'm looking forward to it. I missed it last week because I was away, and I'm looking forward to the chat and having seen the game on Saturday. And I know there's a bit of transfer news and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it. Should we just get straight into it, Baz? Because there's a bit of sort of doom and gloom about and uncertainty because of the lack of transfer activity, but things seem to be moving. Talk to us about a German midfielder. Go on, we'll kick off with a positive start.
Yeah, Marvin Mehlem. He plays for Darmstadt in Germany. They were in the Bundesliga last season, but did get relegated back to Bundesliga 2. I think from what I can hear, he was one of a few bright spots in that team that got relegated. Played a lot of games. His performances, primarily, he's a midfielder, but can play. He's an attacking midfielder, but he can play either side. It sounds like he's got a degree of flexibility about him, and I think his performances last season have attracted quite a bit of interest. Interestingly, he was left out of their team. Funny enough, that beat Coventry in Germany on Saturday. So City aren't the only Championship team that are losing pre-season friendlies, and I know there's a lot of concern about things at the minute. I know Derby were pumped 4-0 at Chesterfield last week and lost at Shrewsbury, and then obviously Coventry were beaten by Darmstadt. So yeah, he was left out. It seems to be that the feeling that I got yesterday. I was off doing football things with children yesterday, but I did get a phone call to suggest that is very close and that they are hopeful of getting that in this week. One of a couple they're trying to get in this week. So I think that's a good move. He looks, he's at a good age. 26, 27. He's played a lot. He's played a lot of games in both the second Bundesliga. He's played games in the first division in Germany. He's he's no stranger to Tim Volter either. I think their paths crossed earlier in their respective careers at Karlsruhe.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a player with pedigree, and I like. Again, we were talking about this at the MKM on Saturday, and we'll come to that game a little bit later on. But I like the profile of player that they're looking at. Charlie Hughes at Wigan. We'll talk a bit about him in a minute.
Certainly.
20-year-old defender. They're probably going to have to pay over the odds. They're probably going to have to pay greater than what his market value is. In all honesty,
£7 million, isn't it?
Say again.
£7 million, isn't it?
I'm not sure it'll be that high, but
with add-ons. Yeah,
but I like that signing. But coming back to the midfielder, they need. One thing that struck me throughout the summer so far is their midfield doesn't look as strong. Javi Simons is coming back, and I think he's looked good through pre-season so far. Just quickly, morning, Fletch. You right?
Good morning.
Well, live, Fletch. Nice of you to join us. Was your duvet comfortable?
Oh, it was, mate.
Were you getting breakfast in? Were you getting breakfast in bed? What was going on?
Well, the world of news, and I'm going to be dipping out in about 15 minutes again because I've got another bulletin to do.
We're privileged to have him, Baz, aren't we? We're privileged to have him. It's just sharing a little bit of his life with us on the 1904 Club.
It's heartening. But yeah, so I think he is a player that profile of player they've been looking for all summer. He's Mehlem. He fits into that mold, obviously, and it's also interesting as well that he will be a player.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Is it done, or is there a fee?
There will be a fee. I don't think it'll be huge. I think it'll be fairly low key. So it's not done yet, as far as I'm aware. But they feel like that the feeling at the club is that that is a player that they will get, and being attacked by a fly, that they will get over the line this week before. So not unlikely before Fiorentina on Tuesday night, but more likely before Reading on Saturday. And as I was touching on that, I feel like the midfield dynamic needs to improve. and I'm sure if we don't today, we will on a later podcast talk about Seri. It's
we've got to
interesting.
talk about that today.
It's
we
interesting.
have to talk about that today.
Yeah,
because he could be out the door, couldn't he?
He's not really featuring that much, and it seems to be that the preferred duo at the minute is Slater and Simon. So it'll be interesting. I guess we'll know more on Saturday, because that is the final game of pre-season, certainly public game of pre-season, is the one we always tend to look at and think that's a good indication of the starting lineup, for the first game. So I was a bit surprised that Seri didn't start against Newcastle, if I'm honest. But I do think that Walter feels that Simons and Slater at this stage have got more legs. But I think if Mehlem was to come into it, there is another midfielder they're looking at from South America, not Uriel Shelley, by the way. There's no names at this stage, a bit like the striker situation. There's one or two players that I think they're trying really hard to keep under wraps. And they were trying really hard with Charlie Hughes to keep that one quiet. They didn't want that coming out. I was told that, that we don't want that one coming out at this stage for fear of alerting other clubs. Unfortunately, the risk of transfers, there's so many people involved and so many people are aware of it, that even if the club, Hull City's end, they keep it stum, at some point, whether it be the Wigan end or the agent or whoever it may be, they have no control over. And these names, similar to Kiefer Moore, Kiefer Moore was a player that they've been working on for quite a long time. They wanted that name kept under wraps, and pretty much they got it under wraps until he was on the way to the airport, and then obviously it came out, and lo and behold, he ends up at Sheffield United. So that is a thing, that is a concern that they have, and certainly with the strikers, there's a couple of strikers they're looking at that they want that kept hush hush for the time being. You have to respect that, but it will ultimately the very nature of the beast. It will come out.
Fletch, I take it you were up at 4:30 researching and having a look at videos of Marvin and Mehlem. Is it Mehlem? Mehlem?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, Mehlem.
Right, okay. Is he box to box? Is he what is he? Is he a passer? Do we know anything about him? I know he's played 191 appearances and scored 21 goals. German youth international from 16 to 19, but I don't know nothing about his style. Do we know?
Comes across more as a number 10. So he played as a number 10 last year.
Another number 10. Germany. Well, mind you, most of the number 10s are gone, but they collect number 10s.
Yeah, so you'd have to, if you were going to play him there, that would mean Irma's going out to the right-hand side again, doesn't it? But yeah, right-footed. He can play on the left as well, which is maybe a good thing as well. It shows versatility. I think looking at his stats from last year, 20 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, it was part of a team that was absolutely atrocious in the Bundesliga last year. So he was holding his own, and Tim Walter's known him for a very long time because he was connected with him when he was a youngster at a different German club. The name escapes me, unfortunately.
We did that while you were still asleep.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Baz and I were up at 4:15 doing that research.
Of course you was.
Of
course you was. You still get in at 4:15 from nights out, Burnsy, so I'm told.
Well, that was Saturday night. That's another story.
He plays like a 10, tries to set stuff up. That's basically the nutshell of how he plays.
Right. Okay, that's a bit of optimism. Baz, what about Casey McAteer at Leicester? Is he on the radar?
Just 1 second. And we were all at the MKM on Saturday, and I felt this throughout the game that they lacked creativity. Abdouche was good, probably deserved a goal for his performance, but I felt like they lacked a real creative spark, the ability to play in a bit like Abdouche does at times, but really drive the game by the scruff of the neck and be that player that gets hold of the ball and looks to ping crosses in, and so this lad looks like the sort of, maybe I'm not going to say the missing link because I don't want to go all out, and if it goes belly up and he doesn't sign, we're back to square one. But I like I feel like that is a big area that they need to bring in. McAteer is a player they like. Fletch, you were in the media room at the MKM on Saturday when me and Tim had a bit of a game of cat and mouse, and I threw names at him, and he laughed. He laughed, and he batted him back. But yeah, McAtee is a player they like. I think. Look, we've talked about this all summer. The owners talked about this. It was a massive thing last season. The loan market, and the loan market is going to be somewhere they look to exploit. And McAtee is one of those. They will look. We can probably answer this question now, Burnsy, because I know we've had an awful lot of questions into the 1904 Club on Twitter, so thank you for those. But I did see quite a few coming in about August the 20th, the date that. So for those that don't know, when we sat down with Ajum ahead of the Fenerbahce game, and I asked him about players and where they were at, and did he think that they were ready for the start of the season? And he referenced August the 20th, and I think Tam did as well. And I was a bit. We were chatting after that in the media room at Riva after that, and we were a bit like, what is August the 20th? Was there what does it mean basically? So I've clarified that with Ajun himself, and he feels that August the 20th is the date by which point a lot of the Premier League squads will have finalised. Sorry, a lot of Premier League clubs will have finalised their squads. They will know where they're at. They will have a lot of their business either done or well on the way to being done towards the end of the window, and therefore they will know those players that are going to be allowed out. Now, Jay Stansfield is a good example of this. Jay Stansfield is a player they really like, that they've looked at for a period of time now, not just this summer. I think he's been on their list for quite a long time. Now,
he's the striker at Birmingham, yeah?
He's a striker at Fulham that was on loan at Birmingham last season. Birmingham, obviously, we know is splashing all kinds of money in League One, and they want him back, and they really are pushing hard for him. Now, Jay Stansfield, Marco Silva wants to keep him at Fulham. He wants to give him a chance, but that will depend on what Fulham do in the window. Now, there's a chance that Stansfield is part of Fulham's Premier League squad going into the new season, but there's also a chance that he's going to be on the fringes, and that won't satisfy Stansfield, who wants to play every single week. Now, that's a deal that a lot of clubs, and I think City will be involved in that if Stansfield comes up later in the window for loan, they'll be after him, depending on what other. And I think that is with regards to strikers, they might well bring in one before the 20th of August. They may well not, and it may well be a case of like a profile of a player like Stansfield that they have to wait for beyond August the 20th, because that is when they feel within the club that Premier League clubs will start to make key decisions. I'm not saying it's going to be right. August the 20th is here. Now we know it might be the 21st, 22nd, but it's around that. That is the date, the kind of the area of the month they think where big decisions will start to be made. And I think Stansfield is an interesting one because he's different in profile to Kiefer Moore, to Oscar Estepinen. But he is
another striker in for the start of the season, though. I'm interrupting again. I'm going to do a lot of that today. But they need another striker, don't they, Fletch?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bertie, 100%. You can't just lay everything at Oscar's door. Even though I think we can all pin our hopes on Oscar having another good season, it only takes a kick in the leg or other part of the body, and he could be injured after match day one. You can't, you've got to have some backup for him, and that's the position which, for me, is the priority. They've signed.
It's another one we'll talk about.
They've signed Cody Drame, but he's a fullback, who's going to be challenging the captain. Now, yes, you can argue that other deals haven't been done yet, and that's just part and parcel. But that's a deal I would have looked to have done possibly later, unless other clubs were obviously sniffing around for it. Number 9, a striker's the priority.
Yeah, but as we said,
so where's the striker? Where's the striker? Is there another one?
There's one they're working on. I don't have a name because, as I said, they're trying to keep it. They're trying to keep it hush hush. But as we said the other day, Fletch, with regards drama, yeah, and I was suitably impressed from the 45 minutes or so we saw of him on Saturday. But transfers don't work like they do on Football Manager. Drama was available at that time, and they got him. It wasn't a case of they prioritised drama over signing a striker, because that's not how we know that's not how it works. So drama was available, they got him in, they've done it. Now I think the attention has to be, but they are working on, if you look at it, they're working on Mehlem. They think they can get that done this week. Then Charlie Hughes from Wigan, they think that they can get that done this week, but there needs to be, there's a bit of work to do there that, it's not by any stretch done and dusted. And Liam Miller, the winger from FC Basel, who was, of course, at Preston last week. So there's 3 live signings right now, and you've got McAteer work. So there's 3, potentially 4 that they're working on to try and get in before Bristol City. So look.
Tell us the Miller deal then. What's tell us the Miller deal? What's the situation there? Actually, Fletch has got to go. Tell us about Miller as a player.
Go on, Fletch.
How much?
Quick, agile. At Preston last year, he seemed to be a little bit different to their, what I would call, stereotypical style. Preston, to be really aggressive and more direct. He gave them a different dimension. So he seemed to be one of the brighter sparks of that Preston team. Can play wide, likes to get crosses into the area, which is obviously what Tim Walter's after. Baz, you've alluded to that substantially through the pre-season. So he would be, again, another good fit.
Okay. So where are they at, Baz?
I was told yesterday it's ongoing. They're hopeful. And that's Fletcher's gone to do his latest news bulletin.
Come back to bed.
That is a player that they like, that they're in talks with. I think there's a bit of work to do on that one again, but they, it's ongoing, and that I think we'd all agree that they've not brought enough players in at this stage. What I find interesting, actually, and it's a point that it's obviously it's come to me over the last few weeks. If you think back 12 months, they hadn't done that much business by this point in the summer, by the 29th of July. Liam Delap was in at the start of pre-season. He was, he arrived, basically the deal was done, and then he went straight to the airport and flew out to Turkey for the training camp. Jason Aquilo was a player they were talking to while we were out in Turkey. And I haven't got the dates in front of me, so forgive me, but he was done either the back end of the trip or when they pretty much got back to England. They had the young left back on trial. We landed we landed on the Wednesday, and we played Grimsby on the Saturday. And the young left back from Holland, or the English lad that played in Holland, his name escapes me. Sorry, he was on trial, played a couple of games, then got let go. They didn't actually do that much business early on. Everything was backloaded. The final week of the window, Ryan Alsop came. Then deadline day, you had Tyler Morton, James Furlong, and obviously Jaden Philogene. I think Twine's first game was Blackburn, so second, third game of the season. So they're not. I know we're all fretted now because we can see the first game of the season, can't we? It's next Saturday now. It's a week on Saturday, and they are so far away from having a squad that's capable of competing in the Championship. But they're not that far behind in terms of what their recruitment strategy was now compared to 12 months ago. And 12 months ago, everything felt under Liam Rosenior a lot calmer, a lot better, didn't it? Everything now feels, because of 20 players have gone. Admittedly, 1 or 2 of those are kids and were never going to play in the first team. So that figure is inflated by 1 or 2. A lot of players are gone. But again, all the players that have gone, I don't think we can really have any complaints about. We knew that all the loan players were going back. We knew that there was a chance that Greavesy and Philogene would get sold. They have. Everybody else, I think, am I missing something? Are we disappointed that anybody else has gone?
Maybe the only one that was a surprise was Tufan. But as I said the last time I was on, they have to have a plan. All this was predictable. They have to have a plan. So they're working through the plan. They want the backsides kicking if it doesn't come off. But it was all predictable in terms of what they're doing. And I would stick with that. But I can understand why people are getting a bit nervous. And I think the players we've talked about already, 3 or 4 names. And if they're in for the start of the season, I think I tweeted to somebody on Saturday that, I thought they probably needed 4 before the start of the season then, and another 6 by the end of the transfer window. Strikers are the priority. Having seen the keeper on Saturday, he wasn't very pretty in pink, Pandl, was he? And I would say they need a keeper. I think that's a priority now. He just was not a commanding presence for me. And on the evidence of that, and I've only seen him there. I suspect there is potential there, but he didn't. I can see why Liam Rosenior wasn't playing him, and so they need a keeper for me. I'd be ringing. I got a tweet on Saturday from Regan Slater's dad suggesting that they ring Carl Darlow. I would agree with that, but he's just sitting on the bench at Leeds. So I think they need that. I'm definitely with Fletch that they need another striker before the start of the season. Oscar, is getting up to his match fitness. He has a little hamstring pull, and they're in trouble.
I 100% agree with everything you said there. I think that, me and Fletch said this the other day, that I like Oscar. I would have probably brought him back in January. I thought he offered them something. He would have offered something different. Alas, that didn't happen. I'm glad they brought him back now. I think any striker that can come in from having never played in England, playing a fairly below average team as he did under Shotta Arveladze, and get 13 goals in a team that battled relegation, I think is promising. I think based on the types of goals he scored in that first season, he's got the capability to score 20. I mean, people will probably jump on that, but he scored 13 goals in a really, really poor team that created very little.
He had injuries in that season.
And he had injuries. So I think
then the new manager didn't really fancy him. So
no, exactly. So I think Oscar is a player you want to have around. I think the signs, albeit the early signs we saw on Saturday, when they could get him involved, he looked okay. I think he will score goals, but he isn't the answer. He's not a long-term answer. They need 3 strikers. It's what
you say that he might be the answer.
Well, he might. Yeah,
Why can't he be the answer, Baz?
He could. Yeah, I mean, it depends what.
If he's a 20-goal a season striker, as you've just said, then he's the answer, pal. He's the answer.
It depends if he can stay fit and if they can get a tune out of him. If they can find a way to get him. I asked him on Saturday about how he thought that Oscar did, and he said he felt he did well. They can be better with him. They can get him playing closer to goal. They can give him more service. But the caveat to that is that, he only arrived back in the country early part of last week. His first training session was only on Wednesday. So, the players haven't been used to playing with him. They've not trained with him all summer to work out how to get, with respect. They spent 10 days in Turkey playing with Ryan Longman up front and a couple of days with Sellers Fleming before he got injured. And then Henry Sandat, who's from the under-21s and clearly nowhere near ready for first team ready. So, they've got to find a way of getting him involved. So, but he obviously wants. If we look at it, he's got Oscar. He wanted Kiefer Moore, so they were his 2 kind of like big strikers, and me and him had a lengthy conversation about Ollie Watkins. And I'm not saying obviously he's going to that, but that is the profile of striker. So so you've got Moore and Oscar who can play. You can play into and you can play crosses into. And he likes the profile of somebody like Watkins who can play in behind, who's got the pace to go in behind. So I think the second striker they go for will be in that Oscar Kiefer Moore mould. And then the third striker is they'll look for somebody that's short, that's nippy, that they can play in behind and that can stretch the game and play off the shoulder. So that's where we're at. The goalkeeper, go on, Burnsy.
Well, I was just going to interrupt because I want to have this discussion with you, but maybe we'll get into it now. CJ was on Twitter to the 1904 Club was eulogising about Abdush or Rome. What do we call him? Abdush, I think, rather
Abdush,
than yeah. So and I was, and he was teasing me, saying, I bet you don't raise this with Baz, because I don't think there's enough end product. He's lovely to watch, but I don't think there's enough end product from him personally. But could he play as the second striker? So if it was Oscar and him as the second striker who plays that sort of system, would that work? And do you think there's enough end product? Because I don't. As I like his little dribbles and everything like that. There's not enough at the end of it for me.
I had this conversation with 4 or 5 fans actually in the departure lounge at Istanbul Airport last Saturday, and we were talking about Abdush. We had this exact same conversation, and I said to them that I like Abdush. I think he's a great lad. I think he's beautiful to watch. He's very silky, but there's a lack of end product. And if he is to be the player that gets City creating and whatever you this season, his numbers have got to rise. You know, he doesn't score. He doesn't get assists. You know, he had 16 games last season, and he was coming into a new country, and it was perfect for him because, you know, we said this on the podcast when he signed, that because you'd got Jadon, you'd got Fabio Carvalho, in theory you'd got Anas Sarori, you'd got other players, he could afford to just sort of sit in the background, you know, and get used to being at Hull City and get a feel for it, and then hit the ground running in the summer. So that's the pressure on him now. That's what he needs to do. He has to, his numbers, I think for a player of his obvious technical ability, he's got to be looking at 10 goals and at least 10 assists. I think for a player of that quality, that we can all see it. We can all see his control, his vision, the way he carries himself, the way he dribbles. He's got that ability, but he's got to turn that ability into numbers. It's no good. It's no good in drifting past 5 players and then putting the cross into the goalkeeper or putting the cross into the first man or falling over.
That's my point.
And he's got it. So, you know, and he's got to be, I guess time will tell. I think he's got it in his locker. Absolutely, I do.
Well, he needs to open the locker and produce it because, you know, and I'm just wondering whether he can play as the one next to Oscar. We'll wait and see. Nigel M to the 1904 club, and we've touched on it already. And I don't think we can save it till next week on the 1904 club, Baz, because he might be gone. Nigel M says, do you think Seri fits the system? I remember Tan saying in an interview, saying he's trying to work him out. Saudi Arabia, is it likely that he'll go? Would you take the money? Is the money on offer? What's the story with Seri?
Yeah, look, I love Seri. I think he's a great, again, another good lad. He's a great character around the football club. But I don't think he fits this system that well. What I would say, however, is Seri changed. He developed his game under Liam Rosenior, didn't he? He became a real, almost like a pressing monster under Rosenior, and that was something that wasn't in his game.
Further forward latterly, didn't he?
Yeah,
further forward, and it was good to see. And he's capable. He's obviously a capable footballer. He's a quality footballer.
Of course he is. And but I think he's only got a year left on his contract. He's well into his 30s by footballer standards. And I think he may well feel that after a couple of years here, and the chance to go and, you know, play in Saudi with big money on offer. And I think for City, if you could he's obviously a big earner. We know that. You know, they had to pay him an awful lot to get him here. If you remember that first summer where they were struggling to attract big names, they did it, the likes of Seri and Tufan, partly by the owner, but also by paying big money, big salaries. That's no secret. So I think, look, if you could get a couple of £1 million out of a Saudi team for him and him off the wage bill, I think you've got to take it. Now, what I would say is it would be another big fixture, another big character lost out of that dressing room, and that is, you know, that would worry me. But equally, I think he's got, you know, Seri will, like a lot of players, want to go and try it in Saudi. They want to, you know, the way of life, the style of football, the finances that are ridiculous, and you know, I'm not, you know, Seri's not short of a few bob because of the type of money he's earned, you know, at Fulham, at City. So, but you know, the figures that are on offer in Saudi are genuinely life-changing, even for footballers that earn a ridiculous amount of money anyway. So I could see that one running.
I was going to say, when do we start our Saudi Arabian 1904 club, if the money's so good? You know, Fletch is back now. He's heard a whisper about it. He's decided to rejoin us now, be part of the team.
We're in talks at the minute. So it's on the lie low. But yeah, I think that's one that will probably run throughout the window, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. And again, that will leave a big hole in their squad, their dressing room, their experience. But they'll have to fill it, and it's like Lakilo, isn't it? Lakilo, I think we'd all agree. Again, lovely lad, but just not good enough. And I think that's the danger. And I think that Fletch, I don't know what you think about this, but that's the danger. And I've seen fans saying we need 15, 16 new players to replace the 19, 20 that have left. They don't at all, because otherwise you end up in a situation with a bloated squad of players like Ryan Longman, with respect, Jason Lakilo, Ryan Woods, that you're paying an absolute fortune to, that you don't want. The manager decides he doesn't want because they can't cut it in the Championship at that level, and you farm them out on loan, and you end up paying these players to be on 2-3 year contracts that you don't want. So they have to be careful not to just sign 4 or 5 extra players just to, fill out the squad or whatever. And we get to October, November time, they're nowhere near it. They're not up to the standard. And then January comes and you've got to find homes for them whilst paying them. So they've got to be careful not to go too gung-ho and just sign a crazy amount of players that saddle the wage bill and give you players that, like Lakilo, were never good enough. Just were never good enough for a team that were pushing for the playoffs. At the minute, they're a team that are going to be fighting to stay in the league as it stands. Hopefully, by the end of the transfer window, they become a team or a squad that are capable of pushing top 10 and then maybe going higher in the second half of the season. At this stage, that squad is and I keep saying it, and I've said it 4 or 5 times, that squad is nowhere near good enough to challenge for the playoffs. It's barely good enough to stay in the division. So if they get the recruitment right, I think that will change. Of course it will. But even so, Lakilo is not good enough. And that is the example of not going gung-ho and just signing anybody.
But the caveat to that is that when you sign someone like Lakilo, who was a Liam Rosenior signing, and we've talked about him doing his due diligence and whatnot, and like the signings that Liam wanted to bring in, it just never worked for Lakilo, which is a shame. It's a big shame, but it's the same as when we had Malcolm Ebuwe on loan. He was brought in to change the squad, and it never materialised. Yes, I agree that some of those players did need to move on because they weren't getting the minutes that their careers deserve. But at the same time, I'm concerned that players just in general overall haven't been, for me, coming in quick enough. If you're getting rid of 2 or 3, then surely you can do some calculation and work out, can you bring someone in that time? It just feels like the balance is too much in one direction at the moment.
Which is why I think that if Seri does go, it won't be till later in the window, because I don't think from a PR point of view they could have another one going out the window of his quality. Can you see Seri going there much?
Same with Giles on that PR thing, by the way.
Yes. So you expecting Giles to go? Sorry. Well, hold on. We'll come back to you, Baz. Fletch, Seri,
I'm unsure. I think he would be a huge miss if he did go.